No. Oh, sorry. No. They're coming in.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to begin today by saying that when our government launched the Way Forward, we advanced a comprehensive vision for achieving greater efficiency, strengthening the province's economic foundation, enhancing services, and improving outcomes to promote a healthy and prosperous province. At the core of the vision is our goal to return to surplus within 7 years while maintaining quality programs and services for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Today, in keeping with the commitment outlined in the Way Forward vision, we are announcing a significant reorganization of government that will result in a flatter, leaner structure. Following the principle of doing better with less, these changes will result in a streamlined operations and reduced costs of delivering effective programs and services. I will now announce the details of this new structure, the benefits, the synergies, and the efficiencies that we have achieved. We have established a Department of Fisheries and Land Resources. This department unites all aspects of support provided to renewable resource industries and better positions government to support economic development. To maximize the benefits of realigning the lands branch, its headquarters will be relocated to Corner Brook to position it near the majority of agriculture and forestry activity within the province. The Honourable Steve Crocker is appointed as the Minister for this department. We have also established a Department of Tourism, Industry and Innovation. The former Department of Business, Culture, Tourism and Rural Development has been streamlined for greater efficiency, and parks have been moved from within the department as part of the mandate to advance tourism. The Honourable Christopher Mitchamore is appointed as the Minister for this department. Another department that has been established is the Department of Municipal Affairs and Environment. This department reflects the mutual responsibility that the provincial government and municipal governments share regarding waste management and environmental protection. It will position the provincial government to work more effectively with municipalities and the federal government to achieve a higher environmental standard and promote sustainable communities. I would like to note that this will mean that now 3 of the 4 Atlantic provinces will have a similar portfolio. And the Honourable Hetty Joyce is appointed as the Minister of this department. This will establish an Intergovernmental Indigenous Affairs Secretariat and an Office of Labrador Affairs. Now, establishing an Intergovernmental Affairs and Indigenous Affairs Secretariat unifies our government's efforts, building on intergovernmental relations, and our efforts to advance our relationships with Indigenous governments and organizations. The Office of Labrador Affairs will address unique issues faced by the region and advance social and economic development. The responsibility of these offices will remain with me. We have also moved the Office of Climate Change within Executive Council. We have made this move following the signing of a pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change. This arrangement recognizes that climate change impacts programs and services across all departments and agencies. Honorable Perry Trimpler will continue with this ministerial responsibility. In addition to being appointed Minister of Service NL and the Minister responsible for climate change, Minister Trimpler also assumes the following responsibilities. He will be the Minister responsible for Francophone Affairs, the Minister responsible for Government Purchasing Agency, and the Minister responsible for Workplace NL. We are also reducing silos in government operations, in keeping with commitments made in the Way Forward vision. A government marketing functions will be consolidated with the Communications and Public Engagement branch. Engineering services will be merged with the Department of Transportation and Works. These shared services will result in increased efficiencies and effectiveness within government operations. In addition, the Office of French Services will be moved from the Human Resource Secretariat to Service NL to support government's capacity to deliver services in French. These changes are effective immediately. Websites, as well as documentation for departments, will be changed to reflect the new departmental structures. The changes that I've announced are the result of some extensive work. Since we took office, we have been closely reviewing the structure of government and identifying opportunities to streamline. By implementing this new structure, we're continuing to adapt to our fiscal climate with a goal of settling this province and setting it on a strong economic footing. The restructuring of government is an ongoing process, and the changes announced today mark another step on that road. In our efforts to achieve a flatter, a leaner management structure, we have been focused on gaining synergies and improving efficiencies. We have also been focused on finding a way to make staffing levels within the provincial government financially sustainable. To underline the need to make our government flatter and leaner, I want to note that a number of provincial public sector jobs per every 1,000 people in Canada in 2015 was 67. In our province, there were 94 public sector jobs for every 1,000 people. In Atlantic Canada, that number is about 80. So to put it another way, on a per capita basis, our public sector was 40% larger than the Canadian average. So to discuss our continued efforts to address this unsustainable growth that has happened in the public sector over the last decade, I will now turn the proceedings over to Minister Bennett. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. As the Premier noted, last November, the provincial government launched the Way Forward, a vision for sustainability and growth in Newfoundland and Labrador. One of the key commitments outlined was to achieve a more efficient public service, including government's commitment to complete a review of departmental organizational structures and management subordinate reporting relationships by the end of March. We began the process of streamlining the public service with the elimination of 19% of the deputy ministers' positions last August and 20% of the assistant deputy minister positions and 31% of the communications positions last fall. Those decisions to date reflect our government's long-term goals and objectives and mark an important step in creating a flatter, leaner management system. Today we are continuing with the implementation of the new flatter, leaner management structure. A detailed review of departmental organizational structures and management subordinate reporting relationships has been completed. The new flatter, leaner management structure will result in the elimination of 287 positions, 287 total management positions, of which 90 positions are currently vacant. This represents a 17% reduction in management positions. Notifications for impacted employees will begin today. And all notifications will be completed within a week. We realize that this is a very difficult time for people who are impacted by the new management structure. This decision was not an easy one. It was very difficult, as many tough decisions had to be made. However, in light of our very serious situation, they are decisions that we had to make. We are committed to make core government more efficient and focused. The people of the province will hold us to that. Decisions announced to date reflect our long-term goals and objectives and mark an important step in creating our flatter, leaner management structure. And today we are proceeding with a number of actions intended to create the efficiencies in the management positions throughout our core government. To ensure that we provide the necessary services and programs to the people of the province, we are creating a more efficient and streamlined management structure. I want to be clear. My priority today is to speak as the minister responsible for the Human Resource Secretariat. As a result of this reduction, a number of positions will be eliminated, and employment will end for employees in those roles. Other employees whose positions are impacted will avail of restricted, merit-based assessment for the remaining positions. We know this is a difficult time for employees whose jobs have been eliminated and for those who will undergo competitions for newly created or realigned positions. And the Public Service Commission is available to provide employee support for individuals and their families through the Employee Assistance Program. The Human Resource Secretariat will provide support to assist those who will need to prepare for the restricted competitions that will be taking place as a result of the new management structure. All departments have been directed to immediately work with the Human Resource Secretariat and the Public Service Commission to carry out a restricted merit-based assessment process as per the Public Service Commission restructuring policy. This process will be ongoing for a number of weeks, but government is committed to concluding that process as quickly as is possible. Out of respect for the impacted employees and their families, I will not be speaking to specific employee details or departmental details today. We have provided the total number of positions to be eliminated through this process. Today's actions reflect the completion of the review of management positions within core government, exclusive of agencies, boards, and commissions. And this will provide greater clarity and stability on government's rationale around management-level positions that remain within the core government. Flatter, leaner management is expected to reduce government spending by approximately $20 to $25 million annually in salaries and benefits. Employees who leave government, regardless of the circumstances, are entitled to the cash equivalent of their unused leave time and severance pay. Those costs are already included in government's liabilities. The only additional one-time expense is related to pay in lieu of notice. And while the actual expense for pay in lieu of notice will be determined once all staffing actions are completed, government expects approximately $15 million will be reflected in the salary expenses for this fiscal year to cover costs associated with pay in lieu of notice. In closing, I certainly respect that the media have a job to do. However, in this new world of instant communication, I ask that they be respectful of the impacted employees and their families during this time. There will be some employees leaving their workplaces after receiving unsettling news, and I ask that their privacy be respected and that they be provided the opportunity to first speak to their families. During this challenging time, we will do our best to support all public service employees in any way that we can. Thank you.
You've got 17% of management positions. Does that mean the unions should expect 17% job cuts on budget day?
We are working closely with the union through the collective bargaining process on a variety of issues, and there are no targets and no discussions currently at the table as part of our collective bargaining efforts on job losses. We are in collective bargaining on a number of issues. Those discussions are difficult ones, but we will do what we can and keep talking in hopes that we will be able to reach final agreement on the issues that are on the table.
Just to be clear, and this has been a source of confusion for much of the last year, are layoffs within the unionized workforce linked to collective bargaining?
There is no target for job losses in the public service, as the Premier has mentioned and as was provided to the media in technical briefings. We have a significantly higher than average number of public sector employees. Our fiscal situation is certainly a serious one, but as we do the work and we make the decision, we will be communicating that information to those affected and then to the community.
I mean, in terms of the overall problem, today's numbers are still just a drop in the bucket. If you're going to get the provincial averages down to somewhere closer to the national average, at some point won't there have to be discussions about cutting in the union ranks?
Right now, our focus out of the Way Forward commitment that we made this fall was focused on flatter-liner management. That's what we're talking about today, the restructuring of management positions. And we still have a very high deficit. We're diligently working on the delicate balance of matching our fiscal realities with our economic realities and our social responsibilities to make sure that we provide quality public services to the people of the province. And there are no targets at this point.
What do you anticipate this is going to do to confidence in the economy? I mean, obviously people don't buy cars, homes, or do things when there's this looming possibility of losing their job. 48,000 people work for the provincial government. 197 were cut today, minus the 90 that are vacant. What is that going to do to the to consumer confidence?
Well, when you look at the restructuring that we did today, this was around 1,659 positions, in management positions. So today, it has some stability to over 1,300 management positions, as an example. So we've completed the restructuring within the core management positions. So we, as you know, as the minister had mentioned earlier, there's some stability now for those management that are remaining in their jobs, and it had stability to the economy right now. As the minister has already said, there's no really real target to what happens next. This is a commitment that we made in the Way Forward vision, and I can assure you that through multiple meetings that I would have had with people across the province, they expect us to make sure that we deliver government services in the most cost-effective and efficient way, given the fiscal landscape that we had to deal with.
What's the reasoning for some of the reorganization? You split environment and climate change. Those two sound like they would naturally go together. So why do you split those up?
Well, the Office of Climate Change will remain in Executive Council, which is where it was. It goes back into Executive Council, which is where it was before. And, you know, Minister Tripper has done an exceptional job on behalf of the province in leading those discussions. Of course, you know, Premier of the province, we get involved in the Pan-Canadian framework. So there's quite a bit of work that went into the Office of Climate Change, and as things evolve into a legislative office, it's properly placed, and we have Minister Trimble, who will do an exceptional job, I'm sure, representing the province.
In terms of the scope of the overall deficit, again, like this is still, it's small steps, but it's still very small compared to the size of the deficit. At what point do you start addressing some of the deeper issues to actually cut down the larger deficit?
There's no question that, you know, we have a major deficit situation that we have to deal with, but when we make decisions, we do it in a thoughtful manner, realizing that we're impacting families, we're impacting people. And so we've taken the time, and where the opportunities to restructure, to put in place a more efficient public sector management, in this particular case, we took the time to do it and do it right. And so, and then keeping in mind that there is a balance that you must always find. And we think today, with the restructuring that we had, that we've been able to do over the last couple of months, that this actually strikes the appropriate balance in making sure that we continue to provide the management in the most cost-effective manner, but keeping in mind continue to supply the services that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians so rightfully deserve.
Minister, what message does this send to the unions today, do you think?
I think that the messages that we've been sending to the unions at the table are consistent with what we're saying today. We are eager to have conversations. We are working diligently on that with discussions with the unions. We have, there's difficult decisions that, they're difficult discussions we're having. I think I don't think the unions, I don't get any sense from the unions that they're not aware of the fiscal situation the province is in. But we're going to continue to work on those relationships and those discussions, and continue to be optimistic that we can resolve the discussions, difficult ones that we're having.
Have there been any discussions with the union specifically about layoffs?
No.
In today's announcement, there was no mention whatsoever of healthcare and virtually no mention of education. Those are the two biggest areas of government expense. At some point, is the government going to be looking there in terms of layoffs and job cuts?
From a structuring point of view today, which was really the flatter leaner management point of view, all government departments were impacted, some more than others. So there will changes from a management point of view within the Department of Health and Community Services. So they have been impacted today to some degree within the core management. So as I said, all departments have been impacted, some more than others.
Can you give us a breakdown? What numbers would health have been of the 287 positions? Did health get hit the hardest?
Yeah, as I said in my speaking notes, out of respect for the employees that are in the process of being spoken, those impacted employees that are being spoke to beginning today, and that process will unfold over the next week. I am not prepared, and we are not prepared to have a discussion on the details of those departments. This is a very active and live human resource management activity that's underway in government. It's a very comprehensive one, and until we have the opportunity to speak to our employees first, we won't be providing the details on the 287 that we feel are impacted now. When we have that information, when it's finalized, when I can be sure that the employees have been notified in the correct way, we will certainly provide that information to the people of the province at the appropriate time.
You noted that the province has 94 public sector jobs per 1,000 population. The Canadian average is 67. Is there a target for what you want to get that number? Are you aiming for 67, or do you have some slightly higher target than that?
There's no targets. I mean, we've often said, and I said in my notes today, that we'll always be looking for opportunities to make sure we maintain efficiencies within government. People expect us to do that. It's our responsibility. But we don't put a target in place, and the Canadian average, depends on, in some cases, the more populated provinces. I mentioned it's around 80 in the Atlantic provinces right now. If you look to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, areas of extreme land mass as well, they would be just above 80 as well. So there's no target, but we need to always compare of where we fit, and we know right now that we are at the top of the scale when it comes to public service employees per 1,000 for population.
How many jobs would you have to cut in order to get down to 80? Any idea?
It's not a target that I look to. It's never a calculation that I've done. When we look at restructuring, our goal is to make sure that we can restructure government to continue to supply valuable services, but do it in an efficient manner. So there's no target. This is a number, a precise number that we need to get to. That's not our focus here.
And I would just add to the Premier's comments that the information that the media has been provided with regards to the Canadian averages has been provided as context for the decisions around flatter, leaner management. As we've said, we have no current plans or proposals around unionized public sector layoffs, and the financial situation of the province continues to remain serious. And as the Premier has indicated, we continue to assess options in front of us to make decisions when we can.
In terms of this idea of flatter, leaner management, all we're talking about today and the announcements from last year have been focused on core civil service. Is there a plan to adopt the same ethos for NALCOR, for the health authorities, and for the university, for the school board?
I think the responsibility on all of us is to make sure if it's an agency, if it's a board, we said in our way forward vision document that we plan on, we want to see less ABCs within the province, and we'll continue to work on that as well. In some cases, it means legislative changes and so on. But it's the taxpayers' money, so our job is to challenge the leadership to make sure that they run the agencies and the boards in the most cost-effective manner. Of course, we'll continue to work with our agencies to make sure that that happens.
Do you hope to have new labor agreements in place by the time you announce your next budget?
The collective bargaining process is a very fluid one. I think it would be irresponsible of me to make any assumptions about a date. We are working on the collective bargaining process in one stream, and we're working on the budget decisions in another. And those two, although financially linked, they're not linked from a process perspective. And we are working through the steps of collective bargaining in a way that respects the union's obvious and rightful right to act on behalf of their employee, their membership, and our responsibilities as the employer and our responsibilities to the taxpayers of the province.
Are you close to having labor agreements? Are you well into the talks? Or?
The talks have been ongoing since November, and we are continuing. They're ongoing.
Brimmer, you promised during the election categorically that you would not cut public service jobs. What do you say to people who are feeling today that you didn't promise?
It's difficult, and because when those announcements and comments were made, it was in a much different environment. If you look at all three political parties engaged in that election, all three, based on the information that the former Premier Davis had put out, we were anticipating a $1.1 billion deficit. That was the plan that they stood on. They ran their own campaign on that. In September of last year, I reached out to the former Premier and in the correspondence, asked to paint a picture of what the financial situation was of this province. We didn't get any answers, and as you know, during the campaign, I asked for that many, many times. We didn't get it. It didn't take long, though, after the election. We quickly found out that indeed the $1.1 billion deficit that he had forecasted, it was indeed going to be $2.2 billion. So that was a big miss, and information that I would have liked to have had. We took that a step further, and when you look at the forecast for this year, I think the forecast for this year was somewhere around $100 million based on the election platform. He was the only person that had that financial information. Mr. McCurdy or our, party, we would not have had that information. The only individual that had access to the accurate information about the fiscal forecast within this province would have been the administration. So that we didn't get that. So as it happened, even then in 2016 and 17, the forecast then was moving for even measures that they would not have had any control over to $2.7 billion. So we're going from 1.1 to 2.2 and forecasted this year to somewhere around $800 million to $2.7 billion. So the fiscal environment in our province had changed drastically than what everyone was expecting. And so we had to make, we're left in a situation that we had to deal with. I mean, I think everyone in the province would understand that things changed considerably, and making those comments at the time was based on information that we did not have. And unfortunately, we find ourselves here, and that we have to deal with this, recognizing that, it impacts families, it impacts individuals. I mean, I'm guessing everyone in this room will know individuals today that will have a discussion, and we're human too, and this impacts us, and I wish that we had had better information going into the election campaign last year.
Mr. Bennett, are you still confident that you'll hit your deficit target of $800 million for this coming year?
We're still having ongoing discussions around what the budget's going to look like for this year. We're working hard to achieve the targets that we set out in our 7-year fiscal framework that we announced last year. Certainly, we have to make decisions in the context of what's happening in the economy, what's happening in regards to revenues for the province, what's happening in regards to expenses. There's a number of things that we have to do, and through the series of cabinet committees that are working diligently on this, as well as the cabinet itself, I'm confident that we, as a team, will make the decisions that will provide a budget that is one that is the right one for the people of the province and respects our role as stewards of taxpayers' money.
Last year during the budget, you were absolutely categorical that you would hit those targets.
That's certainly what the work that we're doing now is leading us to. We want to hit those targets, but as we look at all kinds of different information, there's a whole number of factors that may require us to think of things a little bit differently. But our targets are ones that we're working hard to achieve, and that work is ongoing. And whether we'll hit it or not, we'll let you know on Budget Day.
Sorry, is it possible that estimate targets could be revised?
We'll let you know on Budget Day when the work is done.
Have you got a date picked yet for budget?
No, not ready to announce a date on budget. And when we will, you'll be the first to know.
I think there will be impact on services because of the elimination of the 287 positions. You said there's this principle of doing more with less, but that's not anymore.
We're not anticipating any impact on services, just the synergies that we've been able to put together and share services. As an example, we feel that there are many opportunities for the service delivery not to be lessened or decreased. Matter of fact, we think there's some synergies there that the public service will be able to act more efficiently.